Going live, waiting a minute for it to connect. Awesome. So now I feel like I have a connection. So hi there. It's Monday afternoon. Let me know if you can see me and hear me and feel me. I'm Lauren, the Love Angel, and I am a tantric love and relationship coach. And I love empowering men to embody their full essence so that they can thrive in love. And I also love helping women claim their value and self-worth and self-love and their own sovereignty so that they can also have their ideal relationship and partner and aspects. And something that is, hi Erin, is coming up for people a lot. And one of my favorite questions is, how do you attract your next partner? What traits and values and aspects do you look for? And kind of like, how do you get what you really want without kind of just going for that perfect ideal and expecting perfection? Because of course we're all humans and we're not perfect. And once you get that ideal partner and commitment, that's when the real work starts and the juiciness begins, and when conflict could start to arise. So my values that I'm going over today are more pertain to, cool, you have this epic partner, you're together, things are going good, but then, oh shit, like the first wound comes up or the trigger or the dark aspects of the other person shows up. And then what do you do? And if you have a partner with this first quality that I'm going to talk about, that conflict may not come up as so severe. It may not come up as at all, or you may be able to navigate through that conflict much easier than if your partner and yourself didn't have this first trait. So the foundation of all of my work and my embodiment and my own practice is unshakable, unconditional self-love. And I would say that this is the number one trait to not only have for yourself, but also to look for in your partner. And again, we're not striving for perfectionism. We're just going for something that we're cultivating and something that we're working on and something that we're committed to over and over and over again. And why is self-love so important? Well, it turns around the entire relationship dynamic of I need, want, love from my partner exactly like this. And if I don't get it, I'm going to react, be emotionally unstable, cause conflict, cause neediness, set up unhealthy expectations. What up, Jordan? And, things just start to go downhill, let's say, when we're not the source of our own unconditional love. And of course, your partner is a source of love for you in a relationship, but your partner can never be the source of unconditional love for you. And why? Because they're human, and humans aren't perfect. And only really there's two sources of unconditional love, and that's yourself and the divine God consciousness source, the Buddha, Jesus, whatever you want to call it. Grace is kind of my favorite term. So grace and yourself. And if you feel me on that, let me know if you've ever been in a relationship where maybe your partner didn't have unshakable self-love or confidence in themselves, or really valued themselves, or they had a lot of self-doubt, and how that can really wreck the foundation of a healthy relationship. So you could have the ideal partner. She could look really good on paper. She could have really hot, sexy body. She could have great communication. She could show up. She could have really hot sex. And when shit hits the fan, if she doesn't have unshakable self-love, then I would say the relationship may not last long term, and vice versa for the male. So Why is this important? Is again, we are the wellspring of our own love. Like we are the Ace of Cups, the picture where the chalice of love is overflowing. And we have a deep inner relationship with ourselves where the magic of our essence is just bubbling over. And so when we share with a partner, it's like we get to just share our true essences with each other and not fill a void or a need. And so then we stop looking outside of ourselves to fill something up. And it can be so subtle, and everyone does it. And again, no one is perfect. But then we get out of this need dynamic and we get into this overabundant sharing dynamic of love, which is so beautiful when you're in that. So being the wellspring of love. And when men are the wellspring of love and relationship, they are a pillar, like they're running energy through their whole body from the heavens down through their heart, down through their cock, and down into the earth. And they are like the Shiva consciousness, the Shiva-like essence. And they really hold the container for the feminine. And the feminine, as we all know, we run on estrogen and our emotions can be a little more unstable, I would just say, overall. And so we're the creative life force, we're the Shakti, we're the feminine, curvaceous, we move in spirals, we're nonlinear, and we're just creativity itself. We're creation, we're creativity. We just want to paint life with colors and fill it with beauty and radiance. And men really have the opportunity and the essence to be the pillar of strength and light in our lives so that we can be the vacillation. We can be the light in the dark, and we can have a full range of emotions. And why that's important for this dynamic in particular is because women tend to have a more intense emotional reaction to stress in their everyday life. And I'm talking about minor stressors, like, I don't know, our hair didn't turn out right, or someone flipped us off, or, something just didn't turn out right. It's just like really minor things. We tend to react with a little bit more of a stronger emotional reaction. Whereas men tend to just let little things slide and let them go. But then if things start to build up and they don't release, they may have a stronger emotional freak out or anger, of like a more of an anger response later. And then their stress level gets a lot higher. So men react stronger to very high levels of stress, whereas women react more often to lower stress indicators. So why I'm saying that is women need a little bit more of a consistent, soothing container, kind of like a foundation, like the man is holding her so that we can move and we can fluctuate and we can feel things. And that can be really nice. And it's really nice to have a partner that wants to do those things, that wants to hold space for you, that wants to be patient for you. But the downfall is if you rely on your partner to soothe you every single time that your emotions go, whoa. And if your partner can't be there, or if he doesn't pick up the phone, what tends to happen is women revert into an inner childlike self, like an inner 5-year-old, and we could throw a tantrum, we can scream, we can, again, we're trying to source that love and soothing from outside of ourselves. So yes, it's nice to have a partner that soothes you and shows up and can modulate your stress levels, but it doesn't replace your own ability to self-soothe. And so self-love is number one. And what comes with that is, for women, the ability to self-regulate, to bring yourself down from an emotional trigger, to fill yourself up with your own loving presence, and to self-regulate from stress in your everyday life. And that is actually vital. So anyone here know what I'm talking about? Have you had to self-regulate, self-soothe? and also knowing why that's so important to be able to bring yourself down from stress so that it doesn't project onto your partner as to why you're having, a stress response. It doesn't become his responsibility or his fault, right? And if we don't know how to self-soothe and self-regulate from a source of self-love, then everything becomes his fault. We project every nuance or, upset in our day kind of starts in our subconscious mind to become all about him. And because he could also be looked at as the soother. And if he's the only soother, then he's also the cause of the upset. So that self-love dynamic flips that all on its head. And you start to take radical responsibility for your own experience, which is another epic, amazing trait to have in a partner. And taking radical responsibility. So I'm going to write these down. So radical self-responsibility means being the owner of your own experience and fully owning what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're projecting, being able to share your experience with your partner, but not blaming your experience on your partner. So, what that could look like is using nonviolent communication. It could look like, hey, partner, when you didn't show up on time, I felt angry, and I made that mean that you didn't love me anymore, or that you didn't want to show up for me, or that you don't value my time, or that you don't think I'm important to you. And that's very different than just screaming on the phone and saying, I'm not that important to you, am I? And so that's not taking radical responsibility for your emotions. Blaming another person for how you feel isn't taking radical responsibility for your state. And so when we begin to express ourselves from compassion, from radical responsibility, we can say things like, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anger, I feel upset, but I'm going to own the fact that my upsetness is mine. And how can we kind of like come together and mutually solve that experience, which comes to, I'm going to come back to self-love for men, but I just kind of got on this radical responsibility tip. So this comes back to being vulnerable. And why is that such a huge key for building intimacy and also kind of ninjaing, energetically going really smoothly through conflict. Like conflict is bound to come up in a partnership, right? So when you are vulnerable, you're able to soften and feel yourself, and you're able to listen to your partner. And if you're not vulnerable, you have your defenses up and your ego mind is hearing your partner, and you're listening on how you can respond in order to defend yourself and not validate that their experience is real. So when we're listening from a vulnerable place, we're seeing, wow, how can I empathize with my partner and what he or she is telling me so that I can really feel any words or actions that I did actually hurt them. And we're not listening in a way to defend ourselves or to dispute what they're saying to us. We're listening with our vulnerability and our ability to be wrong, our ability to apologize. That all fits to me under vulnerability. There's nothing like being vulnerable and being fucking humble as shit than saying, I'm sorry, I messed up. You're right. My actions, my words contributed to hurting you. and I apologize. And that really, for me, is one of the hardest things to do, is to apologize, because my ego is like, I don't want to be wrong, and I don't. It's very uncomfortable to be so vulnerable that you could really deeply apologize to your partner. Um, Vulnerability, it really brings intimacy and the ability to also feel what you're truly feeling underneath a grievance. So say you're getting in it with a partner, and you're going back into that like blame and that blame cycle, like you didn't do this, and it means that you are always this way and you're never going to show up for me, or like whatever your story is. Well, underneath that is a vulnerability. Underneath a complaint is always a deeper need for love. And if you're in a state of blaming, then you can't feel yourself, and you can't feel what your deeper request is, which is usually takes your ability to soften to even make the request. So you're not going to be able to make a request for a true need if you're not being vulnerable, and if you're not feeling your heart, and if you're not going underneath a trigger. And whenever there's a trigger in a relationship, it's an opportunity to feel where that trigger is coming from. And again, not project or blame it on your partner, but to feel deep inside, what unmet need do I have that isn't healed yet? What part of me from my childhood is really pissed off right now that it didn't get their need met maybe when you were a child, and you're now seeing your partner as a mother or father figure to project on your unmet need. And the most triggering relationships are usually the biggest opportunity for healing and for growth. And we're not always meant to complete that cycle with that partner, but at least they bring those deep wounds and triggers up so that you can really look at themselves, like look at them and feel them. And that's the other step with vulnerability, is actually feeling what you're feeling without attaching a story to it. And and then when there's a story, usually you're in your mind and you're not actually feeling the emotion underneath that. And vulnerability is terrifying, and it's also the most powerful stance that you'll ever have. It's what we truly yearn for in relationship, and what we truly want is that deep bonded intimacy that only comes when you open your heart, and it only comes when you share this super tender, sweet little part of you that doesn't always come out, but that's what builds a bond, and that's what makes lasting, beautiful love. So the other part of vulnerability is empathy. And again, being able to feel your partner and what they're saying to you and how they must be feeling. And again, really listening from the soft place inside of you. So who can feel me on the empathetic stance in a partner? Anybody have any stories around empathy and being felt and being seen and being heard? And often in communication, it's enough for your partner, if you guys have a grievance and you have something you need to work out, of just saying, wow, I really feel you, and I really hear what you say or what you just said, and I can completely validate your experience. And I don't need to change your experience, and I don't need to dispute your experience, and I don't need to say that it's wrong in any way or that I didn't do something, because obviously in your perception, that's your truth and that's your experience. So yeah, empathy is a really cultivated muscle, and it's not something that is easily accessible for a lot of people. We are taught to be in our heads, we're not taught to be in our hearts. So it is something to come back to over and over and over again. Okay, so back to men and why it's important for them to have a self-love practice, and what may go wrong or, haywire in a relationship if men also aren't sourcing their own wellspring of love deep inside of them and aren't looking for the feminine to fill a void inside of them. So men have this very special relationship with their mother, hopefully. And that bond is really the first bond that they have. It's their first feeling of nurturing and love and oxytocin and survival is usually with the mother, and women too. But somehow I find that this issue comes up more with men, so I'm just going to address it. The men that I've been speaking with tend to have a little bit more of a mother wound than the women that I've been speaking with. So I'm just generalizing here, but it can go either way. So men got their first, dose of the feminine from their mother. And, there's a saying that they come out of the pussy, like in birth, and then they spend their whole life just like wanting to get back into the womb. It's like, that's the place of perfection, of wholeness, of when all their needs were met, when they were completely at peace. And then they want to go back into the womb. Like, I want to go back into that perfect, blissful peacefulness. But if they can't source that perfect, blissful peacefulness within themselves through their own source, through their own wellspring, through their own connection to divinity, or doing warrior training, or doing shaman plant medicine, or really intense meditation, like really long, intensive stouts of silence to really source that feminine essence from inside of themselves, they're going to always be chasing it. They're going to always be needing and wanting the feminine and seeking and sex addiction and porn addiction. And the men that I'm talking to are often turned into being saviors so they can get the love that they didn't get when they were little. So it's like they turn into wanting to save the woman, because if they save the woman, they'll get the love that they really want. They needed that outside validation because they're not already inwardly whole, inwardly validated. Like, a man and a woman, like, we don't actually have to do anything to get love. And we are love. We're made of love. That's our true essence. That's who we really are. We don't actually need to do anything to validate ourselves. We don't have to become something that we already inherently are. And I find that with men, especially, they go into the savior dynamic of needing to save and women usually would go into the victim stance of being like, oh, I need something, like, help me. I can't do this by myself, or whatever the story is. And so we run the I need to be saved program, and men usually run the I will save you, and that's how I will get the love that I so truly need and desire. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It just might drive you a little crazy after a couple of years. And it can be a really hard dynamic to switch out of. It's not impossible to switch out of it, but it is difficult. So seeking outside validation, seeking outside of himself. And it usually comes from a deep inner child wound where they weren't loved or accepted by their mother or their father or their family or their religion. There's so many stories I hear of men of not feeling accepted for who they are. Like, they couldn't truly be themselves. They couldn't express themselves. They couldn't speak. They couldn't just be free. And so we build up all of these layers and personalities and nuances, and we hide our original essence, like this really beautiful aspect of who we are, to fit in and get at least belonging, and which usually leads to feeling the experience of love. So Men not being the wellspring and source of their own love also leads to sex addiction and porn addiction, because men need to go into the experience of death and the experience of the void. They need to go into that sense of emptiness to feel connected with all that is. And that experience also happens during orgasm. It's kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum. It's fullness, but there is that moment of full bliss, full completion, full connection to the universe. And so if men aren't integrating that experience or channeling it or feeling deeply nourished by orgasm, then they're going to just seek it over and over and over again through these empty experiences, such as porn or just being promiscuous and having sex with a bunch of women and just being like, that can also be a validating thing of wanting more and more love, but it can also just be, I want to have that experience of wholeness again. I want to feel connected to the universe. And it can come out in kind of empty ways that aren't really satisfying him and aren't really penetrating to the depth of his soul. And then again, it's just a cycle that goes over and over again. So the other thing that men can do to feel this femininity, this natural, beautiful, nurturing energy, is to source the feminine through nature. And we call nature Mother Nature for a reason. She's regenerative, she's nurturing, she sustains us, she gives us all the life and beauty and energy that we need. So I would encourage men, and of course women, again, I'm generalizing here, but women, we're pretty tuned in with our femininity for the most part. Like, I feel very overall nurtured and resourced with the feminine. But men can really start to shift their perspective and be made love to by the wind, or be like absorb the sunlight and really get into the sensation of what it feels like to be nurtured by the ground, by the earth. Like, we can lay directly on the earth and set the intention of actually being nourished and nurtured by the earth and actually drawing in her sustenance and her beauty as a source of the feminine and as a source of that love and that connection and that deep wellspring. And she'll start to respond to you and she'll start to play with you. And it can be a really beautiful experience. Hi, Melissa. Hey, Harold. He says, had a relationship for 2 years where I forgot myself for those years to fit her persona. So yeah, you are trying to just be a really good epic man and trying to please your partner, and there's nothing wrong with that. The only problem with that is, I'm assuming your partner never reached a point of satisfaction, or she wasn't sourcing her own love inside of her. So it was always like, oh, you need to do this other thing for me. Oh, you need to change that. Oh, we need to shift this other thing in order for me to be happy. And as you said, it was a 2 year probably toxic trap where you forgot yourself and you weren't in tune with yourself, and you lose your own power and you lose your own energy. And of course, she probably wanted to feel your power and wanted to feel your presence. So that definitely goes downhill. So we talked about being vulnerable and self-love and sourcing your own self-love. And yeah, some juicy topics. And so the last one I'm going to talk about today, and I have like this list kind of goes on and on, but something that's really important when choosing a partner for a long-term, committed, lasting, thriving relationship is to find a partner that is committed to growth, to spiritual evolution, to growth, to bettering themselves. And by both of you being committed to that, you're also empowering each other to be a better person than you would be by yourself. So we can all grow to a certain extent by ourselves. We could be super committed to our spiritual practice. That's all great. But if you're with a partner, it's really important to feel like your partner is going to lift you up to a better place than you would just on your own. Like he or she would improve, enrich your life, that you trust your partner, you trust your partner's guidance and intuition, and you can chime in with them and you go, hey, what do you think about this direction in my business? What do you think about this direction in my life? Do you think I should go over here or over here? And your partner usually has a really good sense of who you are and your direction. And it's really important to trust them and to trust their guidance. And of course, trust yourself and your own guidance. But why would you be with a partner that didn't really feel you and feel your heart and feel your soul and feel what's really best for you and how to support and help and guide each other to your best destination, to living your highest purpose, to encouraging your dreams together. So, and has anyone been in a relationship where your partner was not as committed to the growth process as you were? And how did that work out? Hey, Amy, you said amen to that. I'm not quite sure what that was because I wasn't looking, but thank you. And so, yeah, if you're on the path to personal growth and spirituality and you're always bettering yourself, what can tend to happen is if your partner isn't totally on board with that, is one partner grows faster or in another direction than the other partner. They might have different rates of growth. They might have different values. They might be just going in other directions, or one partner is just completely stagnant, doesn't want growth at all, doesn't want to change, doesn't want to evolve at all. Of course, the point isn't to change your partner, but I believe the purpose of relationship is, honestly, it's just growth. It's really just cultivating and fortifying yourself. And I would look at the success of a relationship is, how much did I grow? How much did I learn? How much did I embody myself? And what would I do different next time? And we all make big mistakes, and that's okay, because the point is growth and evolution. So I would say that a very healthy, long-lasting, satisfying relationship could end when the partners feel complete together. They're like, wow, I grew as much as I possibly could with you. Now, in order for my next growth and evolution, I need to go over here, and it's not with you. And I need to grow by myself, and I need to find myself. And that happens a lot with people who are really happy together, and there were really beautiful couples, and then they just kind of start to grow apart a little bit. Amy said, amen to attracting a partner committed to ascension with me. Ooh, yes. And she used the word ascension, which is really sexy. I like that. And Jennifer said, yes, I was in an abusive relationship and tried counseling with little benefit. Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. Which topic were you referring to? And Roman, if we are with a partner who fears the loss of control, how do we talk to them about the relationship without them getting defensive? That's a really good question. So my question for you, if you missed the beginning of the talk, was, is that partner who fears the loss of control also resourced in her own self-love? Because if we're resourced in our own self-love and we can feel the wellspring of that, and we're overflowing and we're radiant, and that actually means we're connected to our own divinity. And I would say when there's a fear of loss of control, that person probably isn't connected to their own source of wellspring and self-love. But your question specifically was, if she's fearful of loss of control, how do I speak with her without her being defensive? And one of the easiest tactics for me is just being curious about her experience. And if she's open to that, like let's say she's not in a super highly triggered state, maybe just a little bit of a triggered state, you could just say, hey, I'm really here for you. And I can either hold silence and just hold space for you to have your experience, or I'm actually really curious. Can you tell me more about what you're feeling? She might just be like, I'm angry. I don't like this. And it's like, wow, what does anger feel like? What does the loss of control feel like in your body? And oftentimes, a fear of a loss of control, that's just conceptualization. That's not even real. We're not actually in control of anything pretty much ever. So that's kind of a false fear in a way. And that fear goes really deep into not trusting life in general and not trusting the creator. So that's a deeper thing, but the fear of loss of control, um, I would ask her how it feels. And if she says, um, it feels like the ground is slipping out from underneath me, it's like, okay, what is that? What's the actual sensation in your body? Oh, it feels like ice in my stomach. And that's a real sensation, whereas the fear of lost control is not real. It's not a real sensation that you can actually have in your body, but you can say, oh, it feels like a heavy weight is on my shoulders. And so if you can encourage her to feel the feeling of the loss of control in a safe environment. I'm imagining you're a safe man to be with. So you can say, hey, I'm going to provide complete safety for you to feel this fear and know that you're completely safe, and see what happens, and just be really curious and don't react, and just say, wow, if she says something triggering towards you, which we often do when we're in a triggered state, um, is say, yeah, I really hear you. That's very real for you. I completely could see how you would feel that way. And there's really nothing to dispute. She can't really fight you on that if she feels fully heard. So I would just say, tell me more about that. Really listen. Listen with your empathetic, feeling, vulnerable heart. And then really validate her experience and be like, wow, you're really afraid right now. You really don't want to lose control. I could totally see how that would be really scary for you. And would you like me to hold space for you while you feel whatever triggers that are coming up? Thank you, Crystal. Yeah, this is the beginning of a series of talking about what qualities or traits to look for in a partner to have a thriving relationship. And we can all look for things like confidence and, super sexy and sexual attraction and like all of these things that are really awesome. And as I mature and grow in relationship, I'm looking for someone who takes responsibility for their experience, who doesn't project their shit onto me, who I don't feel like I need to project my stuff onto him, who shows up consistently and has integrity. And I'll get into integrity next time. And there's definitely a few more keys on the list to, I call it choosing an extraordinary man or choosing a God man. And there are definitely a lot more things to share on how to be an empowered goddess. And we went over self-love, which pertains to a woman's ability to self-soothe and self-regulate her intense emotions. And that topic is a whole other topic in and of itself of how to do that, which I could probably get into later. And I wanted to start with things that I feel like both sexes could identify with. So self-love, being vulnerable, taking radical responsibility for your experience, and finding a partner, being with a partner where you support each other's purpose and path and you are growing together. Again, I actually haven't said this yet. The number one thing in a man's life is his purpose. And if you don't fully support and aren't really aligned with his purpose, he's probably not the long-term partner for you. And if you want to get in the way of his purpose, you're probably not the right woman for him. So I'll get into purpose next time. But that pertains to growing together. That pertains to being on a similar path and supporting each other in it and growing together and support, like actually leading each other to a better place than you could get on your own. So trusting each other, trusting each other's wisdom and intuition. So those are this is the beginning of really going deep into this and encouraging people to think and feel a little deeper about what they want and what they value and why. That goes beyond like just the little feel good list of, you know, he's really hot and he has his shit together. And, you know, those are cool things. But I really value an emotionally mature partner. I really value someone who makes me feel safe and that I can also be emotionally mature with. So I feel like as we progress on this relationship journey, we look for deeper qualities and not just things like sexiness or confidence. It's like, wow, who are they really when we're in conflict, and how can we navigate through that? And do they have the qualities to, again, take radical responsibility and go deep into themselves to feel what they're feeling so that it doesn't become the other partner's job to self-soothe or to heal them or to save them rather. So these are what I found to be super juicy and important. And thanks for sharing the love. Thanks, Hillary. And we'll tune in next week and I will go deeper into this topic of epic, awesome traits to look for in your next lover and also to embody in yourself. So I'm Lauren the Love Angel. You can private message me. I have a men's group, Presence, Power, Passion, that you can join. I post a lot of juicy content in there. And yeah, loveangelcoaching.com if you wanted to go to a website, but I'm here on Facebook all the time. So I love chatting with people. And I look forward to hearing about your relationship successes and how this Facebook Live impacts you and your relationships.